Elizabeth Moss, Sharon Stone, Ed Harris, Paul Rudd, Patrick Stewart, Kim Cattrall, Wayne Gretzky, Bruce Springsteen, Secretariat, Tony Izzardo, Carl DiLorenzo, Anna Garcia, Mika Fitzpatrick, Rich Hansen. What do they all have in common? Well, if you love prep, maybe you rank those prep celebrities on the same level as those non-prep celebrities. But I've actually got something more specific for you. They've all been photographed by one prep alum. He's also a prep dad. Mark Wyville graduated from prep in 1976, and for most of the 45 years since then, he's been working as I think, a very versatile professional photographer. And if you look at his work, I think the breadth of the subject matter is matched only by the depth of the emotion that he's able to capture, regardless of what the assignment might be. And he really has covered everything from performing arts to pro wrestling, from architecture to horse racing, where he's been particularly acclaimed. And of course, there's always the place where it all began. Mark was a student at Prep when he started building this portfolio, and for the past 25 years, really so much of the visual record of St. Peter's Prep, so much of what you probably think of when you think of what Grandin Morin looks like, what Prep athletics looks like, that's all been captured through the lens of Mark Wyville. So I thought it was about time we turned the camera around and chatted with Mark about his career and some of his favorite prep images through the years.
My father, who owned a few SO stations and Exxon stations in Jersey City, he'd always come home with a lot of interesting things. Sometimes it was cameras, sometimes a dog, sometimes a box of fruit. And so I always had a camera around the house. So I would always take it with me wherever we went. We went to Saratoga or Florida or down the shore. So I was pretty good at handling a camera by the time I got to prep. And so I'd go to the football games and I'd photograph the football games, and they'd use my pictures in the Petroc and some in the yearbook. And the guys at the time, the upperclassmen, were so thrilled that they had a kid with a camera who was willing to go out and take pictures at the games. I used to bring my film to get developed up to Ben Levy, up at Levy's sporting goods store on Monticello Avenue. And he sort of became my mentor, Ben Levy. He would look at my photos, look at the film, and I guess he saw some talent in me, and he encouraged me to enter one of my color photos I took at Saratoga when I was a sophomore, between sophomore and junior year at Prep. And he said to enter it in the Kodak Scholastic Photography Awards, which was a pretty prestigious contest. And it wound up getting an award. I was the only high school student in New Jersey to get one. So that brought some notoriety to the school and to me. The best part, I mean, my parents liked it because we got invited to the opening in the city at the gallery, and they had cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, and they liked that. My mom and dad were like, you should enter more contests. So this was one of the Thanksgiving Day games, and as you can see, Roosevelt Stadium did not have a lot of grass on the field, and most of the people, I think, were sitting back because there was there was sort of a roof, Roosevelt Stadium, that would cover the back rows, so everyone sat back there. So it was pouring rain, but some of the best photographs are taken in really bad conditions. So this is also, one of my favorites from the prep days. I was very excited when I was named the president of the camera club at prep. So that meant I had a key to the darkroom. There was a little darkroom on the third and a half floor, and so that's where we would develop our film and print our pictures, and that's how we did the yearbook. Every single picture we took ourselves. We developed the film, and I taught some of the underclassmen at the time. So this photo was taken at the Thanksgiving Day game in senior year, and Willis Ewlings won the Myers Trophy. He was the center on the team. And, Jesus Marrero, to his left, he was the running back, and he actually got the MVP game ball for that. And then Tommy Landry is there. He was our quarterback. So this photo went to another awards, and it also won. And again, so here I am senior year. I'm winning these photography awards and thinking, what am I going to do next year when I graduate? And I guess I just thought that this was something I could do. My parents were behind it, which was nice, not having to have them say, well, you can do that as a hobby, but you've got to study something real. So my mom and dad were completely behind it. So that was really very important. When you have an older brother growing up in the 70s, you get exposed to and turned on to a lot of music that your friends and peers may not know about or listen to yet. So one summer, my brother George shows me this album with this guy, scraggly beard on the cover, and he said, you got to listen to some of these songs. So we put on Rosalita. I remember it was in the backyard of a barbecue in 1974, I guess. And I had brought it to a friend's house, and I said to everybody, you got to listen to this. And I put it on, and I was, the hit of the party after that. So then in 1978, I was basically a professional photographer at 20 years old. So my brother George, took me in to see Bruce at the Palladium in New York City, and I took my equipment in with me, my Nikon, and I did the whole series of photos of the show, which to this day, I mean, that roll of Tri-X film has certainly paid for itself a few times over, because the pictures have become sort of vintage and used in a lot of different publications, and Bruce's album and books and magazines and things like that. So, but yeah, so I would always have a camera on my shoulder. If I went down the shore or I went to a club, I'd always have a camera on me, and sometimes Bruce would show up and play, and I'd grab some great close-up shots, and that was always a lot of fun. I was a staff photographer for the Jersey Journal for several years, and the Star Ledger. The great thing about working at a newspaper as a photographer is every day is something different. Back in the 80s and 90s, pretty much, I was exclusively did equine photography, and I was hired to go around the country and even up into Canada to photograph on these beautiful horse farms and different racetracks and during the Breeders' Cup. And I was considered to be one of the better equine photographers, and not necessarily just the picture at the finish line, finding a different angle and just the right beautiful light. I've done probably for the last 30 years or so a lot of work in the acting and theatrical field. So I've photographed hundreds and hundreds of plays and got to meet a lot of pretty famous actors and interesting people through that. I believe it was 1996, Jim Horan and Father Keenan decided they wanted to bring in a professional photographer to document the St. Peter's Prep events and sports and things like that, and asked me if I would be interested in doing it. So I said, sure, great, let's do it, and I've been honored to be able to do it ever since. In the classrooms, pretty much a student is just kind of in his own head, it's just him, the book, and the teacher. But when they get out of that classroom and out into the games and Marauder Nation, and they have that common bond, they kind of suffer through the defeats and enjoy the victories together. And that's where a lot of the great emotion comes. So I try and show a little bit of everything throughout the game. There's even if there's what's going on the sidelines between the coaches and the players, and the basketball games are great because everything is we're so close. The fans are sometimes right there behind the players, and then in this shot, we have the Marauder Nation fans right behind the bench, and just as the players shooting his 3-point play, and the look on everyone's face is like, this is going in. But the look of the fans kind of almost tells the picture of the game and what's happening. Cross country is one of my favorite things to photograph. It's outside, and it's fairly colorful, and it's a nice time of year. And in this photo, we had Edwin Clanky leading a huge pack of runners up the hill at Homedale Park. So that's kind of a cool picture to have a prep kid way out in front like that. Everything just worked out great with that picture. We had the snow coming down. We had the finally won a state championship. And the only thing is we didn't have Brandon Wimbush, our best player. While that picture was being taken, he was being interviewed on TV, so he did not get a chance to get in the picture, and he really should have been in there. That's one of those times when you're really happy to be down on the field. And actually in that game, I was in the stands, and I had to sneak my way down through security that night to get into position to take that picture. So the wins are great, but the losses, sometimes when that happens, I just keep a very close eye out to see what's happening with the players and the fans and with each other, because you get a lot of emotion there as well. Sad emotion, but it's just the same. It makes sometimes for some great pictures. This was after a tough volleyball loss, and then the scene of the shot of the player. It's Johnny McLaughlin, I believe, who's walking up the ramp out of the old Giant Stadium after a loss in the state final in the snow that year. So that was a tough loss. Joe Lane was a couple years ahead of me at prep. Now, of course, Nathan Lane, and he did come back to prep a few years ago to see one of the plays, and he was nice to pose with the cast there. But he was in the plays at prep, and I just remember he was quite hilarious even then. He would do impersonations of the teachers and things like that around the hallway. So he was always a cut up. So the teachers, some of the teachers like Jack Campion and Rich Kennedy and Carl DiLorenzo, they span generations of students. Actually, my son Graham, who graduated in 2011, had Mr. DiLorenzo, and as did I back in 1973 or 4 for history. So, and we both agreed that there are certain classes that you don't fool around in, and Mr. DiLorenzo's was one of them. Father O'Connor, who taught me chemistry, was very nice to me. He was kind of frightening to some students, but again, he helped me get through chemistry. And I was sitting there when he was grading my final exam paper, I remember, and I was the last one in the room. He had me sit there, and I think he made me sweat on purpose. And after about 5 minutes, he turned the paper over and he looked at me and he said, "You passed by half a point." And that made my summer. And so thank you, Father O'Connor. But I guess I'll never know what that final grade was. So Father Zardo, he would, as you know, he seems to be almost everywhere. And he was just wandering around after school one day, just checking in with the kids, talking, see how you're doing, see what was going on. And in the courtyard, they'd be playing either practicing lacrosse or baseball or basketball, and he just very casually and easily could just move around for groups of kids, and they would gather around and talk to him. And Father Izzardo was my counselor when I was a freshman at prep, and I can remember sitting down with him and just talking over things. How is school going? What's bothering you? Is there anything you want to talk about? And he was just a very comfortable person to sit down and talk to, and I liked him right away. So jump forward 35 years now. My son Graham was in school, and he was having a tough day. One of his friends was leaving school, and he wasn't taking it well, and we tried to call him, my wife and I, and we couldn't get a hold of Graham. Or we're trying his phone, he wouldn't pick up. And finally we got through to Father Izzardo's office, and Father Izzardo said, "He's fine, he's here with me. No, don't worry, Graham's okay." My younger son Morgan would often leave home without a tie or belt or something, and I said to Morgan, "Did you get drugged today?" He goes, "No, no, I just went up to Father Zardo's office, and he had a tie for me. He had a belt for me." So there were also times during the years when my sons were at prep, and if let's say that we had maybe a death in the family or something, and we said, you could stay home, it's okay. Well, you don't have to go into school today. And they're like, no, I want to go into prep. That's where I want to be. So those are the reasons that I send my sons to prep.